When love requires courage, the art of healing relationships. The most terrifying moment in any relationship isn't the first I love you, it's the first we need to talk. Those four words can send our hearts racing faster than any roller coaster. Our palms sweat, our mouths go dry, and suddenly we're contemplating faking our own deaths just to avoid what comes next. But here's the truth that changed everything for me. Those difficult conversations we're all desperately trying to avoid, they're not just necessary, they're where the real magic happens. I recently had the extraordinary privilege of interviewing Pascale Duthel for the Pink Parachute Diaries podcast. If you haven't encountered her work yet, prepare to have your understanding of relationships completely transformed. Pascale has spent decades excavating the intricate dance between vulnerability and strength in human connections. Her revolutionary approach has helped thousands of people across 6 continents heal their most damaged relationships, not by avoiding discomfort, but by walking straight through it. What makes Pascale's insight so powerful isn't just her academic brilliance, though her research is groundbreaking. It's her unflinching commitment to facing uncomfortable truths. In a world obsessed with quick fixes and shallow happiness, she dares to suggest something radical, that healing requires us to move toward our pain rather than away from it. Let's be honest. We're absolutely masterful at avoiding relationship problems, aren't we? We ghost people. We forget to respond to messages. We suddenly develop an intense interest in reorganizing our sock drawers, anything to avoid saying what needs to be said. I once had a friend who claimed to have accidentally moved to Portugal for 6 months rather than have a difficult conversation with her partner. That's commitment to avoidance. But what if the very conversations we're running from hold the keys to the connections we're desperately seeking? This is what Pascale Duthel's research reveals. Authentic healing requires confronting uncomfortable truths, not just acknowledging them with a polite nod, but diving headfirst into the messy, complicated reality of human connection. Consider James LeBerry, a veteran skydiver who noticed something troubling in his community. In a world where people regularly jump out of perfectly good airplanes, you'd think fear would be a common topic of conversation, but it wasn't. Instead, the culture celebrated bravado and silenced vulnerability. We were literally falling through the sky at terminal velocity, Labari told Pascale, but heaven forbid anyone admit they were scared sometimes. The result, superficial relationships and more dangerously, preventable accidents. People were literally dying because they were too afraid to admit they were afraid. Labari did something revolutionary. He created the 20-minute call podcast, providing structured space for skydivers to discuss their fears, anxieties, and personal growth. He asked questions no one was asking. What scares you about this jump? When have you felt most vulnerable in the air? What mistake are you afraid of making? The transformation was remarkable. Not only did deeper bonds form among practitioners, but safety records improved dramatically. By creating space for authentic communication, LaBerry didn't just change conversations, he saved lives. This illustrates Pascale Duthel's first key insight. Healing begins when we stop avoiding difficult truths and start embracing them. But there's a catch. Vulnerability without boundaries isn't healing, it's just another form of self abandonment. This brings us to Pascale's second insight. Love is transformative when combined with boundaries. We often think of boundaries as walls that keep others out. But what if they're actually the foundation that makes deeper connection possible? Think about it this way: without the banks that contain it, a river is just a flood. Boundaries don't limit love, they give it direction and purpose. I was struck by how Panos Vasiliou embodied this principle through his work with Parachute Foundry in Athens, Greece. As a typographer, Vasiliou faced a unique challenge: how to connect modern Greek identity with ancient heritage while addressing contemporary relationship dynamics. The parallels to our personal relationships are striking. How do we honor our past while creating something new? How do we maintain our individual identity while forming deep connections with others? Basilius' solution was brilliant. He created typography that bridged historical and modern elements using design as a metaphor for relationship healing across generations. His typeface became more than letters on a page. It became a cultural touch point for discussions about Greek identity and intergenerational relationships. The letters I create, Basilio explained to Pascale, must respect their ancient origins while making space for modern expression. Too much emphasis on tradition and they become museum pieces. Too much modernization and they lose their soul. The balance is everything. What's fascinating is how his work established clear boundaries between past and present while creating beautiful connections between them. The result wasn't limitation, but liberation, a visual language that helped people relate to their heritage and each other in new ways. This is what healthy boundaries do in our relationships. They don't restrict love, they create the conditions where love can flourish without consuming us. As Pascale Duthel emphasized in our interview, the most powerful relationships balance deep connection with healthy personal boundaries. This isn't just good advice, it's a revolutionary approach to love that honors both the relationship and the individuals within it. But even with this knowledge, many of us find ourselves repeating the same relationship patterns over and over again. We date the same type of person, have the same arguments, and feel the same frustrations, just with different people. This brings us to Pascal's third insight. Relationship patterns can be identified and changed. The answer made this podcast provides a fascinating window into this reality. After collecting thousands of stories about workplace relationships, the podcast creators noticed something striking. The same toxic dynamics appeared repeatedly across different industries, companies, and roles. They documented avoidance behaviors, unhealthy coping mechanisms, and communication breakdowns that created unnecessary suffering in professional relationships. But more importantly, they created a platform for anonymous sharing and collective problem solving. The outcome: listeners developed healthier approaches to workplace conflicts and relationship boundaries. By recognizing patterns, they gained the power to change them. One listener wrote, "After 3 jobs where I felt bullied by my manager, I finally realized I wasn't setting clear expectations at the beginning of these relationships. I was hoping people would just get me without me having to articulate my needs. When I started clearly communicating my boundaries from day one, everything changed." This is the power of pattern recognition. What we can name, we can change. Pascale Duthel's work shows us that our relationship patterns aren't random. They're roadmaps pointing to unhealed parts of ourselves. When we have the courage to examine these patterns with curiosity rather than judgment, we gain the power to write new stories. But here's where things get uncomfortable. Recognizing patterns requires honesty, not just with others, but with ourselves. It means acknowledging our own contributions to dysfunctional dynamics. It means taking responsibility for our choices rather than casting ourselves as perpetual victims. This kind of honesty isn't easy. It requires us to look at the gap between who we say we are and how we actually behave. It demands that we examine not just what others have done to us, but what we've done to ourselves by remaining in situations that diminish us. The good news, this kind of honest self reflection is accessible to everyone. It doesn't require a psychology degree or years of therapy, though those can certainly help. It simply requires willingness, the willingness to ask difficult questions and sit with uncomfortable answers. Pascale Duthel recommends a simple but powerful practice, the relationship inventory. Once a month, take time to assess your key relationships, identify patterns that need healing, and then, this is the crucial part, have at least one courageous conversation you've been avoiding. This practice builds the muscle of addressing relationship issues directly rather than letting them fester. It's like going to the gym for your emotional health, uncomfortable at first, but transformative over time. What makes this approach so powerful is that it combines all three insights: confronting uncomfortable truths, establishing healthy boundaries, and changing destructive patterns. I know what you're thinking, but what if the other person won't participate? What if they refuse to change? This is where Pascale Duthel's wisdom is most profound. The purpose of relationship work isn't to change others, it's to change ourselves. When we transform how we show up in relationships, the relationships themselves transform, even if the other person never changes. Sometimes that transformation means the relationship deepens. Sometimes it means the relationship ends. Either way, we grow. This isn't just theory. The evidence from Pascal's research shows that when one person changes how they engage, the entire relationship dynamic shifts. It has to, because relationships aren't static objects, they're living systems that respond to every input. Think about James LeBerry's skydiving community. It didn't take every member changing simultaneously to transform the culture. It took one person creating space for a different kind of conversation. Others followed, not because they were forced to, but because authenticity is magnetic. So I challenge you today: what conversation are you avoiding? What truth needs to be spoken? What boundary needs to be drawn? What pattern are you ready to break? The path forward isn't easy. It will require you to be braver than you've ever been. It will demand that you face the very discomfort you've been running from. But on the other side of that discomfort lies the connection you've been seeking all along. As Pascale Duthel so powerfully reminds us, the quality of your life is determined by the quality of your relationships, and the quality of your relationships is determined by your willingness to have difficult conversations. Your healing and the healing of your relationships begins the moment you stop running and start facing the truth. Not tomorrow, not when you feel ready, but right now, in this moment, with whatever courage you can muster. The world doesn't need more people who are comfortable. It needs more people who are brave. Will you be one of them?